So we were only allowed one solution by the prior questioner. I'm a big supporter of reparations, but if I had to pick one, I could imagine a more immediate, a more politically plausible, and a more long-lasting solution by densifying our privileged neighborhoods. But that's not to say that that's the only solution, and reparations should certainly be considered a part of any policy solution. But it's a good question for Jonathan, because he doesn't talk about reparations in the book, and so maybe I'll.
Chris wants to speak to this.
Well, so this is actually self-promotion. I actually wrote a co-authored a paper called Drug War Reparations. And you can read it, it's free online if you want to read it. And I argue that, the state should in fact pay reparations for the drug war, not just the drug war, but it was a state enforced injustice. And I think state enforced reparation is the appropriate response to that. So.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. And Jonathan.
So I'm very sympathetic to Michelle Alexander's argument and the new Jim Crow, and spend a little bit of time in the book talking about some of those themes, and completely agree. It sounds like with Chris too, that the drug war has been a catastrophic mistake, and really an unfair and abusive use of power, and one that has dramatically disproportionately hurt African Americans. And I use the enforcement of drugs as an example of political inequality. I think it's very clear when you look at the data, which actually show that drug sales and drug use are no higher in African American populations than they are in white populations, and yet the risk of being arrested is dramatically higher if you're African American than if you're white. So that's just manifestly unfair, obviously unfair, and I want to read Chris's paper now, because I'd probably agree that that would be a very appropriate avenue for reparations. As to general, I mean, my only problem with the discourse on reparations is that it can be very general, very broad, and I think it's a lot more useful to think about actual cases like reparations for drug war, reparations for something else, and then I'd be very happy to consider what that would look like. But I like the idea very much that when the state or when formal institutions are responsible for a harm, then they should compensate